Thank you.
Okay, thank you both very much. We're going to move back to FDA now, and we're going to hear from Stephen Anderson, the Director of the Office of Biostatistics and Epidemiology in CBER, on the CBER surveillance systems post-marketing.
So Mike, I just wanted to say I'm having trouble. The screen is frozen, so I think I'm going to have to do this as a audio presentation.
You're there, but I have your photo, so I'll throw your photo up there for you, sir.
So somebody's going to have to advance slides.
Sure, not a problem.
All right, so hi, my name is Steve Anderson. I'm Director for the Office of Biostatistics and Epidemiology. And today I'm going to talk about CBER's plans for monitoring COVID-19 vaccine safety and effectiveness. So FDA's approach for safety is really a safety throughout the life cycle approach for vaccines and for its regulated products. And that includes pre-licensure as well as post-licensure space. So moving to the pre-licensure space, the safety data comes in through the various phases of the studies that are conducted and evaluated quite thoroughly by the review teams. As part of that, there's also a pharmacovigilance planning process. So manufacturers, when we get to the biological license application process, submit plans. They would also do this under an emergency use authorization as well. And those plans really outline the safety questions or issues or concerns that arose, and then suggest plans for dealing with those specific safety questions or concerns that arose in the process of studying the vaccine. So what a sponsor may do is suggest doing a post-licensure or post-market commitment, and that might include various types of studies, registries, and those might be for general safety. So if a vaccine is being given to women of childbearing years, which these COVID vaccines will, we might suggest that, and the sponsor may suggest that they might do, for instance, a registry to make sure that that kind of general question is answered. We might also impose or discuss, they may suggest doing a pre-licensure or post-market requirement or PMR. And that might be something such as another clinical study, an epidemiological or observational type study, registries. And the difference between this and a post-market commitment is this is a required study to study a specific safety signal that arises. So for instance, if they get a potential safety signal for something like Guillain-Barré syndrome, then they might need to do PMR.
Dr. Anderson?
The other thing is yes?
Dr. Anderson, real quick. First off, if you don't mind, you can log out and log back into Adobe real quick, so that way you can be back up. But also, what slide are you on? So I can make sure we're on the right slide.
I'm on the second slide.
Okay. And if you'd like, you can log out and log back into Adobe.
I don't want to lose the audio connection is the problem.
You won't. You won't. You won't.
Okay.
But you can keep going. Just make sure you tell us to advance slide if you're going to.
All right. So then finally, the baseline is sort of routine pharmacovigilance, which includes anything from passive surveillance to review of safety literature, available studies, et cetera. So the next slide, this just gives an overview of post-licensure programs that we have. So passive surveillance is one approach that we use, and Tom has talked about VAERS, and then we'll talk about the active surveillance monitoring programs that we have. So I'm just basically going to talk first about the passive surveillance at a high level. So Tom has already really covered a fair amount of this. I'm stealing his slide. So VAERS is this program that's co-managed by CDC and FDA. I'm sorry, this is slide 6. I keep on forgetting to tell you that. So the slide header is VAERS and FDA CBER effort. So the CDC presentation covered VAERS, so I'm just going to provide an overview of FDA efforts. FDA and CDC, I just want to mention that we have weekly and biweekly coordination meetings on VAERS, and then our pharmacovigilance activities right now going on for COVID-19 vaccines. That includes the CBER Office of Biostatistics staff in the front office, as well as the Division of Epidemiology, CDC's Immunization Safety Office, and others at CDC. I want to mention that our Division of Epidemiology physicians will be reviewing the serious adverse event reports that come in for the vaccines. They review individual reports, actually very closely scrutinize death reports, conduct aggregate analyses, and then case series and a variety of other types of analyses. And I think, as Tom mentioned, we're going to be using statistical data mining methods to identify if there's any, again, potential safety signals that pop up or are more frequently reported. Next, I want to, which is slide 7, I wanted to talk about our active surveillance monitoring program. Going to slide 8, the next slide, is talking about FDA's vaccine safety monitoring programs and legislative authorizations. I just wanted to mention that there is legislative mandates for these programs that we're going to be talking about. The first one is really around the FDA Amendments Act. That directed FDA to develop what essentially is a Sentinel system, and the BEST initiative really is part of the Sentinel initiative. And the mandate by 2012 was to cover more than 100 million persons. So I'm going to show you some big data systems, and just keep an eye on that 100 million number, because that's the number that we shoot for when we're doing these types of safety evaluations. And then the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, the last iteration was 2017, just discussion between FDA and industry on priority areas, and the Sentinel system and BEST received funding through this User Fee Act to fund activities. I wanted to touch on data considerations because I think those are important for vaccines. What we're looking for in data systems are really rapid data access for near real-time surveillance. Large databases, this is slide 9, by the way, sorry. Large databases of tens of millions of patients for evaluating rare serious adverse events. Data representing integrated care spectrum, meaning outpatient to inpatient. And that means vaccines are largely given in an outpatient setting or a physician's office or clinics. But what we also want to be able to capture is if a patient comes in to an emergency department or the hospital with a serious adverse event, you want to be able to capture the entire spectrum of those visits in the patient records and have systems to do that. You want high quality data because it's very important to get, if you identify a safety signal, very important to adjudicate that and get that validated properly. You want data with significant clinical detail and preferably access to medical charts. So moving on to slide 10, just a brief overview of the biologics effectiveness and safety system. It includes several partners. The first 3 are sort of contractors. We have academic partners. We have large insurers that are part of the program, and mentioned that we also have point of care facilities and healthcare providers such as MedStar represented. And again, across the entire setting of healthcare spectrum. Slide 11 talks about claims data sources. And just to remind people that claims are obviously the billing data and administrative types of information that are used to send patients, to bill patients for services received in a care visit. And you can see off to the right that many of these systems are in the tens of millions of patients that they cover. The last 3 or 4 are ones that just newly came on board with the BEST program, so we're going to be engaging those for use for COVID evaluation, COVID-19 vaccine evaluation. I wanted to talk about electronic health record data sources too, and many times the electronic health records provide a richer source of data than the claims data. So as you look over to the right, you can see the numbers vary from 1.5 million upwards to 105 million for Optum EHR systems. So we have a lot of coverage with these potential data systems. And then an important thing also to consider is they have strengths and limitations, which I'll talk about in a minute. I wanted then, before I do that, though, to talk about the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services data. FDA has had an ongoing partnership with CMS since 2002 to look at vaccine safety and effectiveness. The data cover a very large population. I'm sorry, this is slide 13. And cover approximately 55 million elderly persons who are 65 years of age or older. It represents a variety of healthcare settings that we're often looking for, and then they're claims data, but we can get access to medical charts for adjudication of adverse events. So this has been a powerful system that you'll see in a minute for many of the studies that we've been doing. I just wanted to talk a bit about limitations of these data systems because I've thrown a lot of numbers and data systems at you. And I'll just say, not all claims and EHR systems can be used to address a vaccine safety or effectiveness regulatory question. So as you're looking at these systems, just remember each one has its limitations. So for instance, the populations they cover. So for instance, Medicare covers the elderly population, but it doesn't give us as much information on individuals less than 65 years of age. It may not cover the healthcare settings of interest. It may just cover, let's say, hospitalizations, and so on and so forth. And it may not actually cover the exposures and the outcomes of interest to us either. We may not be able to capture vaccines that we would like, and then the adverse outcomes that we'd like to see. Slide 15. I'm going to talk a bit about safety surveillance planning that we're doing. So like CDC, we're planning to do near real-time surveillance or rapid cycle analysis. We're planning on, at this time, monitoring 10 to 20 safety outcomes of interest to be determined sort of on a variety of factors. One is on the pre-market review of sponsor safety data submitted to FDA. So that we'll be looking very closely at that data, and especially the phase 3 safety data to identify potential safety questions of interest for us to study with our rapid cycle analyses. We're also going to be looking at the literature and regulatory experience with these vaccines and any experience or knowledge gained from looking at the vaccine platforms and their use in past vaccines and other relevant data. We're also going to be coordinating all of this work with our federal partners, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. So our 10 to 20, list of 10 to 20 should largely be the same as CDC's and other federal partners. It's the plan. And I will say for our plans, we plan on using CMS data for COVID-19 vaccine rapid cycle analysis as sort of our first set of surveillance that we're going to be doing for any new COVID-19 vaccine. Tom had this list of possible adverse event outcomes of interest. I won't dwell on this. He had them at the end of his presentation. So we'll be coordinating which of these and others that we might be using in our rapid cycle analyses. But it gives you a feel for the types of events. I'm sorry, this is slide 17. FDA's experience with near real-time surveillance. So we have considerable experience doing near real-time surveillance. So we've conducted surveillance for the annual influenza vaccine and Guillain-Barré syndrome since 2007. And then we're supporting confirmation of some of CDC's work with their rapid cycle analysis of safety. And we've done that in the past with the seasonal influenza vaccine work that they've done in Shingrix vaccine as examples. We've also done rapid cycle analysis type work or rapid surveillance in Sentinel, doing near real-time surveillance in the 2017 and 18 seasonal influenza vaccine looking at 6 health outcomes of interest. So the question I think then becomes, once we get these signals, how do we adjudicate them? So another capacity that we've built is really the ability to conduct epidemiological analyses, to really look at any of these signals that we get from sort of the screening methods that we're using in the near real-time surveillance. And there's also tree scan and other signal detection methods where we'll need to adjudicate signals. So we've got that capacity with these large databases to do that. So we can do some rapid queries and small epidemiological